I see this on my friend's bookshelf, just healing back pain. I'm like, nah, let me grab it. Then I see this picture, and my eyes rolled. Like if my eyes could have rolled out of my skull, that's what they did. But I had to go to the bathroom and I wanted something to read because nothing's worse than being in there and like only having the Lysol container to read, you know? This is how healing happens, folks. Even though I did not have a teacher or the full understanding of what I was doing, I just did it anyway. The one understanding that I knew is that my body seemed to choose, it was conditioned to fire off terrible pain instead of feel emotion.
Consider this. What if your symptoms, so your specific symptoms, aren't random and your brain didn't pick them by accident? Right now, in this interview, we're going to unpack the unsettling but liberating reason that certain neuroplastic conditions spread in communities, they cluster in families, and they show up in people who would swear that the cause of their condition was purely structural. And we'll map out a simple way to figure out what your next step actually is when the recovery space here feels sometimes loud and contradictory and a little bit exhausting. If you're new here, I'm Raelan Agle, and this is where we make recovery feel possible again by translating neuroplastic medicine and nervous system science into practical steps while sharing stories that help your brain stop treating your life like a 4-alarm emergency. And today, I am so excited to welcome the incredible Karden Rabin joining us from Massachusetts. He is the co-founder of Somia, co-author of The Secret Language of the Body, and a neuroscience medicine practitioner who's helped thousands of people break free from chronic symptoms after he did the same after experiencing years of debilitating pain himself. In this conversation, we'll unpack why insight and information alone can sometimes flip symptoms off almost instantly and for good, and why other times it doesn't stick. We'll also map out a clear, non dogmatic way to navigate recovery when you've been too exposed to a dozen different explanations that all sound convincing and somehow none of them are fully working for you. So if you're looking for clarity, momentum, path forward, and even a little bit or a lot of humor and entertainment, this conversation is for you. So please join me in welcoming Karden Rabin to the Raelan Agle podcast. Karden, so excited
Raelan,
to have you here. Thanks for doing this.
my pleasure.
I've been looking forward to this ever since we booked it. We had so much fun when we got to hang out at the conference for the Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms.
You
It was
know,
such a
you
thick
know you're a nerd.
mouthful.
You
Yeah.
know you're a nerd when one of like the highlight, like true fun social events of your year was going to
Yeah.
something called the Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms.
Yeah.
But I also want to say, because I had a blast with you too, that like we were surrounded by wonderful people. Like all the
Yeah.
people in this space are cool people. There are people. And rarely do we get the gift of being around a couple hundred folks that you don't have to explain this stuff to.
And many of them were doctors and they
And
understood.
and
Like my
many of
head's
them were
exploding.
doctors, right?
Put on by doctors. And yourself, you were a great speaker there. But yeah, that was a really great time. So I've seen you speak live. I know how great you deliver this information and in such a just a easy to digest way. And you have your own personal experience going through all of this too. So, as always, I think that's a great place to start because it really helps when people know that you've been there. So,
Totally.
yeah, what was your journey with this like? How did that
You know,
start?
Brandon, I actually have this expression, especially for men. I say, don't go to yoga and learn from a teacher who's always been able to touch their toes.
So
Right?
validating.
Right? It's like if your teacher is some amazing mover who's been a gymnast and a dancer,
Yeah.
and they've basically had this remarkable mobility since they were born, and then they went to a yoga teacher training and it was essentially all effortless and wonderful for them. They have zero clue how to tell
Yeah.
me a locked up, tight, typical male bro from New Jersey how to touch his toes when I can't get my hands past my knees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
For
not
sure.
learn things from people who have not had to go through the path that you need to go through to get there. That's so important.
Yeah. So I know for many people, when they look back, they see there was a perfect storm of things leading up to their chronic symptoms. Was that your experience?
Yeah, this perfect storm that's slowly built. We could go really old in the story, but I don't want to go
Yeah.
that far back for the sake of time. We could have a second one and do that. Um, but I, let's see, I started to have my first bouts of chronic back pain starting 23, 24. And at 23, 24 years old, I was already, after graduating college, I decided to become a licensed massage therapist and body worker, functional movement guy, cranial sacral therapist, structural integrator, fascial therapist, the whole nine. I like hook,
Just
line, and
that?
sinker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Just these 9 things.
Just that.
Yeah.
I loved it. I was so
Yeah.
committed to it. I've always loved working with the body. I've always been dedicated to helping people get out of pain, like since the beginning. And I was always interested in the puzzles. Um, but the kind of irony was that as I was learning all these new things and being successful enough helping other people get out of pain with those methods, at least for a time, successful enough to have a practice, those same things would help my back maybe for a little while. My back would come back in for a couple of months. I'd be good. And then bam, it would go back out, right? Come back
Mhm.
in and then go back out. And no matter what newfangled structural integration or how much Pilates or gyrotonic I did so that I had a gorgeous integrated set of abs, right? You name it, year after year, the pain got far worse, far more complex, longer lasting, and more debilitating. Coincidentally, just so you know, as a little backdrop, and I just want to keep this contained because it could get big. Um, my mom, when she was 34 years old, fell off a horse, broke 2 of her vertebrae, had a double spinal fusion, and then for the rest of her life, she was prescribed up to 12 Percocets a day to treat her low
Wow.
back pain.
Oh my
This was
goodness.
before we had a thing called the opioid epidemic. It was the standard of care in the late 80s and
Yeah.
90s. My mom had a very addictive personality anyway. And you can imagine what it was like being raised by a woman who was on 12 Percocets a day.
Mm.
And she died when she was 54 and I was 21 from basically complications of the variety of medications she was on for treating her symptoms. So I already had this model of both of back pain, right? And I call it a model of back pain because someone might say, oh, it's genetic or it's hereditary.
Mhm.
It's hugely modeled. It's hugely modeled. The brain can make any symptom it wants, and it will usually pick symptoms it's familiar with or that it's had modeled to it. Your story is similar, isn't it? Right?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Mom gave
It's
you a really
and
good model, didn't she?
as did my grandmother. I was sure this was genetic and it was something that was hereditary. It's fascinating how your brain gives you symptoms that you will believe.
That's right.
CFS was very believable for me. I grew up with it. And I remember hearing Dr. Howard Schubiner talk about on a podcast about the epidemic of carpal tunnel syndrome and how we've seen it move through different countries. And until people know it exists, nobody has it. But once they know it's a thing, everybody has it. And
Oh,
it's what your brain is like, okay, that's something you're going to believe. We're going to use that one.
exactly. And what Howard's speaking
Yeah.
to, we generally call social contagion. And let me
Mm.
just say that family contagion is stronger than social contagion in terms
That
of
makes
the
sense.
modeling, right?
That makes sense, especially since so many of us think about everything as being genetic. And if I have this and my mother or father had this, then clearly it was something hereditary. So that's very
Yes,
strong. That's
it's very
powerful.
strong.
Yeah.
And so I have that backdrop, right, leading into the chronic pain presentation. It's like almost as if the trap had already been set for when I kind of had the first things that hurt, quote, hurt my back, built and built and built. It also had to do with a period of my life where I was still basically uh, completely cut off from my feeling self. I was not, I was emotionally intelligent. My brain knew the right emotional responses to have to people. My mind did, but I never felt those emotional responses. This is hugely important, Raelan, that I don't know if everyone puts together. My favorite example of this is when I fell in love with my now wife. I knew I was in love with her. I knew it. But when we would pause and she would be with me and she'd look into my eyes, I could tell that her entire body was emanating and feeling love towards me. And I was oddly aware that I knew I loved her, but that I didn't feel I could tell she was feeling it, and I knew I wasn't feeling it. And I was like, I think there's something wrong with me. And I want to just say here, everyone's like, don't pathologize, no, good and bad. It's okay to be like, there's something wrong with the fact that I can't feel the same amount of love for my wife, although I cognitively know that I love her. That was an early indicator that like something's wrong in the nervous system, something's wrong in the mind body. If my body won't let me feel an emotion. There's so many other things that were part of this. I was starting businesses. I was under huge amounts of stress to do that. I was trying to. There was a lot, and it all comes to a head. Let's take us to 2017. Also leading up to having our first child, where I'm in the absolute worst bout. I've never had my pain be this bad for this long. I think the longest debilitating bout I had before then was about 4 months. This one was stretching towards 9. And it was just like an endless thunderstorm ranging from my low back through my hips, lightning bolts of pain in my groin, shooting pain down both legs, bilateral ice picks into my calves. Didn't matter what I did. It was resisting everything. When I'd go out to dinner with people, we had to sit at a high top, like a bar or a high table, because I had to alternate between sitting and standing approximately every 4 minutes to just like remain alive. And it was also deeply humiliating and deeply humbling as a person making his living, getting people out of pain with bodywork and functional movement and all that stuff. And so just to briefly kind of like tell the rest of it, and then like the rest is history, is in the midst of all that agony, I went down to Long Island with my wife to teach the anatomy and physiology component at a yoga studio for a yoga teacher training, which is one of the things we were doing at the time. Again, man of authority teaching you how your body works, who in between every bout of teaching was laying down on the floor with his legs up the wall, right? Just to get a momentary, not relief, but I'm not going away, but less pain, right? The guy the drive for 3 hours from the Berkshires to Long Island was agony. And we were staying at the yoga studio owner's home, and I was like taking a nap, woke up, and I saw on her bookshelf a skinny little book, it's over there, called Healing Back Pain by some dude named Dr. John Sarno, which by the way, like, let me go grab it. Is it, do I have it here? Hold on. No, I have the mind body. Oh, there it is. Like, I don't know if y'all have ever seen this book cover, but like, this is ridiculous. Okay. It's like some dude with a ripped back and a towel over his shoulders, right? It's so silly. And also it's like it's this thin. You see how thin it is? Okay.
Yeah.
And so I see this book I see this on my friend's bookshelf, just healing back pain. I'm like, nah, let me grab it. Then I see this picture and my eyes rolled. Like if my eyes could have rolled out of my skull, that's what they did. And my ego, because I had quite a substantial one, and I still have a lovely opinion of myself, was like, and by the way, the back is like sweating. It's got like drips of sweat on it.
This book has come up so many times in interviews. I've read the book. I did not realize that back was on there. I love the focus
so
on
important
this.
To talk
The fresh
about
perspective you're bringing to this book.
And so especially because of this like exercisey dude in the gym sort of thing, I really was like, what could this book have to teach me? And I had in my mind, I was like, it's going to be a bunch of exercises.
Yeah.
But I had to go to the bathroom and I wanted something to read because nothing's worse than being in there and like only having the Lysol container to read, you know? So I brought it
a
with
lovely
me.
Picture.
You're welcome. Yeah, this is how healing happens, folks. Okay?
It's messy.
It's messy and it's random and
And
I
it's
want to be
real.
honest here, okay?
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is that I want to get like hilarious and sacred. This book stumbling into me and me having to go to the
Yeah.
bathroom and not wanting to be bored is why Jen and I have helped 4,000 people heal with our program.
Wow.
Period. Full stop.
Absolutely incredible.
It's why we've written and published our book, The Secret Language of the Body, right? Which has now been translated into 11 languages. None of that
Wow.
would have happened if I did not see this hilarious, sweaty back and then be like, fine, I'll take it to the toilet with me. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. And what's crazier is I am now reading your amazing book, Secret Language of the Body, and there is no sweaty back on the cover. So what is the draw for the rest of us? Have you learned nothing?
I know.
Great
It's
content
totally-
in there, but you need to package it up in a way that's
Oh, we screwed up the marketing big time on that. Thanks for pointing that out. We'll talk to the publisher. I took the book with me, and it doesn't have stories about exercises in it. It does two things very quickly. One, it throws orthopedic medicine and diagnoses like into the wood chipper. It's just like, here's your MRI. And
Yeah.
he does such a skillful job of pointing out the inconsistency of this approach that as someone who'd been doing it professionally at that point for 12 years, who should have defended the approach, I was like, mouth agape. This is enormously correct. Like, you cannot reconcile what he's pointing out with orthopedics and the diagnoses of pain.
Yeah.
You can't reconcile it anymore. And so in this one moment, I realized, whoa, what I've been doing for the last 12 years, even when it's been helpful, has been basically equivalent to putting leeches on people as far as medicine is concerned. It's putting leeches on people because there's no real scientific basis for the orthopedic explanation of chronic pain. Except in acute injury, like you've torn your ACL or you've been hit by a bus and you've broken an arm.
Yeah.
And so it's like, bam, I've been bloodletting. I cannot go back to this because, oh, by the way, then he goes on to talk. In his day, he was looking at, and these are still relevant, personality patterns, personality styles that now we can perceive as the personality patterns and styles of people with trauma, nervous system dysregulation, all sorts of defense mechanisms. But this was one and done. And also from reading the book, I was lucky. I was one of those people who got the book cure for a couple of weeks, which means just reading the book was eliminated my symptoms. All of the catastrophic symptoms of the last 9 months basically went away for many weeks.
Wow. You know what I'm just
That's how I
thinking
got started.
too. There's no luck. I mean, nothing about this was lucky for you in that you went through a ton of suffering. But I'm thinking if we are going to look at it through a lens of luck, you're also lucky that your specific, what we commonly call now neuroplastic symptom was back pain, because it can be anything.
Yes,
Because when I had chronic fatigue syndrome, I was reading books about cancer and diabetes and things that weren't related to chronic fatigue syndrome, but it never would occur to me to pick up a book about back pain. I didn't have back pain. How could that be related? So at least your symptom was called out on the cover with that sweaty back. But the rest of us are like, what does that have to do with my fatigue or my nausea or whatever it is?
Well,
Like
for
cognitive symptoms.
I appreciate you pointing out that just one more level in way fate, I think, is looking out for me. You're right, because it happened to match my symptom perfectly. And I think maybe a little later we'll take the bridge into how can one system be responsible for everything from back pain to chronic fatigue syndrome. But for now, I simply want to say that that's how I got started, and I could not go back to because my commitment in this world is to help people get out of pain and heal. That's the commitment. And I'm not loyal to any particular approach other than the approaches that work. And so it wasn't difficult for me to discard putting leeches on people and actually start embracing methodologies that worked. And Raelan, you and I were talking a little bit before the interview about helping people stitch together a little bit of how the neuroplastic symptom space, the nervous system regulation space, can get really noisy. Really noisy, really conflictual, in many cases, very prescriptive.
Yes. And not always the same prescription, which can be confusing.
No, because my prescription is find a book on a shelf and have to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Okay, your prescription was life is over, I'm going to go to Thailand, right?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna learn the science. I don't know I have a nervous system. I've never heard of neuroplasticity, and I'm gonna fully recover.
Yeah.
And for
So there's
yeah,
a
total opposite ends of the spectrum.
yeah. Yeah.
Just the knowledge, zero knowledge, full recovery. Although it
Boom.
sounds like it was a temporary pause in symptoms, but it sounds like you're alluding to there were some further things that you needed to do to have
Yeah.
this
And so like
permanently eliminate the chronic pain.
if we think about um you and I took very different ways. Many people take different ways, but they still are all working with the fundamental ingredients of what precipitate, cause, and then keep neuroplastic pain or neuroplastic symptoms in place. So yes, I get the book cure. Now, why did I get a book cure? What aspect of the work did that for me? It really falls into the category of the work, which is safety, safety, and uncoupling conditioned response. We'll start there.
Mhm.
So, in the first aspect, when the brain is the only organ in the body responsible for producing pain, and it's the primary mediator for all these other neuroplastic symptoms, including CFS, including mold responses, including MCAS, all of this. These are determinations being made by the brain. When a brain is in a state of fear and danger, period, flat, its propensity to then fire off protective symptoms, because pain is a protective symptom. Energy shutdown, like CFS, by the way, is a protective symptom. Allergic inflammatory responses to benign amounts, or to really any amount of mold, or you name it, Lyme infection,
Mhm.
COVID. These are all protective responses by a brain, every single one of them. I want everyone who's listening to hear what I just said. Whether it's going into energy conservation mode and lowering the function of your mitochondria in CFS, or reacting with massive inflammatory responses to EBV, Lyme or mold or COVID, or producing pain symptoms, all of those are protective responses by your brain. Great. Now, brains tend to fire protective responses more often when they're in danger. Kind of in the way that, like, if you've ever watched a movie, if someone is, and it's like maybe an action movie, we always feel anxious when the person holding the gun is scared because we all know we don't know what he's going to do, right? The person
Right.
holding the gun that looks scared, he might shoot the hero or he might shoot the girl. Like they're unpredictable because we know
Yeah.
that fear leads to crazy responses. Whereas when you have, the hero is always kind of organized, they're not afraid, their hand is steady on the weapon. So when you read a book or get what's called in our place classic psychoeducation, or you work with a clinician that helps you realize that you're not broken, that you're not about to die, or that your back's not about to break, it can be this enormous panacea of safety. And your brain can greatly stop firing off protective symptoms. The second aspect of it is, since the brain fires protective symptoms based on a conditioned response, a conditioned response. Conditioned response is Pavlov rings the bell, the dog salivates. Conditioned response is I smell bacon. And not only do I salivate, I start moving towards the bacon, right? That's a conditioned response. Our bodies and brains are governed by millions of conditioned or associated responses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're just
When you,
robots, basically. We don't
we're
realize it
just,
all day long.
Raylan, if the truth is, and we just have to accept this, we are mostly robots all day.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
when you're driving to, like, you normally drive to work all the time, but this day you have to go to the doctor's office. But once you get in the car, you end up making the turn to go to work, and you're like, damn it, I was supposed to go to the doctor's office, because that's all
Yeah.
automation, that's all robotics, that's all the conditioned responses. I've left the house, boom,
Yeah.
I know where to go. So there's a conditioned response between fear and movement or posture or actions, or just an already always conditioned response that my back's in pain. When you even just read something that helps your mind, which is connected to your brain, which is connected to your body, so they influence one another, go figure, uncouple that conditioned response simply through what's called the book cure in this instance, your brain stops firing the conditioned response. So the combination of safety and uncoupling conditioned response is what
Yeah.
happens in a book cure moment. Aha! But Karden, it only lasted a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Do you remember me talking about not being able to feel love for my wife and my body?
Yeah. That I
Yeah,
had a
I'm
feeling
gonna
that
get
was gonna play in somewhere. That didn't
I'm gonna
sound
get
like a
like
little thing.
I think I might get like hate. I'm gonna get like hate in the comments for that. So my pain came back. And like many people who have a relapse, at first there was a lot of fear. Oh shit, that was fake. What happened? What's wrong? This stuff doesn't work. That was just placebo. But again, I'm only operating from Sarno's book at the time. And his personal belief back then, and it's an important part of a much wider conception of emotion now that's critical in this work, was that underneath symptoms was frequently um, emotions deemed unacceptable by the mind or the ego, and that were being repressed. And he was specifically an overwhelming fan of rage. He was a little myopic. We've very much expanded this field since then,
Yeah.
but I'm a good student. And I was like, all right, Sarno says there's anger down there. And I was like, well, I'm going to fucking find it over my dead body. All right. Because I do not want to have this pain.
How do you do that? I've interviewed so many people that they hear about this. And they're like, I'm the friendliest, nicest person I know. I don't have any rage, but in time it comes out. So I'm always
Yeah.
curious. It
Well, let's
sounds
start with.
simple. Let's just find the rage and get rid of it. How do you do that if you don't even know you have it?
Well, let's start with that first statement. I was doing a consult with a potential client the other day, and the concept of some repressed anger surfaced, and he's like, I don't. He's basically like, I believe you, but I don't really understand because like I'm a pretty happy guy, and this person was into cooking, and I said he's actually a chef, and I said, so what are the five like primary aspects of taste, right? And there's sugar, there's bitter, there's salt, there's umami, and I believe the fifth one's fat. Do you know that's what makes up, like that's the map of your tongue that gives flavor, right?
Yeah.
And I said, just like there are the elements that essentially make up taste, there are essential emotions like fear, rage, love, sadness, etc. Okay? If some chef came to you and said, I just don't ever feel or taste umami, would you think that was okay? Would you think that was normal? Would you be like, you're fine? No, you'd be like,
Definitely.
something's wrong. If
Yeah.
you don't experience ever one of the primary emotions of existence, that's not a virtue, that's a malfunction. And I'm not calling you broken. It's just like
Yeah.
something's wrong in the matrix. If you can't feel appropriate emotions, like if I can't feel the love of my wife in real time when I'm connecting with her,
Yeah.
there's something to work on there. If I don't feel the rage I'm supposed to feel when someone's truly violating my boundaries or being a dick, and instead I feel anxiety and people pleasing, whoa, something's screwed up in that emotional matrix. And if
Yeah.
I just basically go around life happy go lucky and skippy, this is why Sarno's last book was called The Divided Mind, because it's true. We have a conscious and an unconscious. We have an awareness and an autonomic nervous system. We have what Jung would call the shadow. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to just accept what I just told you. If you're missing any of the primary colors of emotion in your day to day, like last example, my cat, when my toddler annoys my cat too much, what do you think my cat does, Raylan?
I doubt he represses his anger.
I love you. You're absolutely right. He just goes, oh, my boundaries are being violated. That doesn't feel good. And you're annoying me. And instead of being like,
Yeah.
do it more, or it's okay, or it's fine, or I'm just going to
Yeah.
learn to love this toddler
Yeah.
fucking with me all the time, he
Yeah.
goes, well, that.
And I bet your toddler's the same. I doubt he's repressing many emotions. He doesn't need any help feeling his
Exactly.
feelings. They just come.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. Until certain parents and society and culture and experiences
Yeah.
inhibit that, sometimes very traumatically and shamefully. And then it goes, oh, okay, great. I'm never going to consciously do that again. But the
Mm.
animal of the body is still having it all go on. So I really wanted to say that to all my folks who are like, I don't think I have those feelings, whether it be rage or sadness or grief. You're wrong. Full stop. Great.
Yeah.
So again, no particular prescription. In the Heal program, we have very uh, progressive, in both the book and the Heal program, we have these very progressive, supportive ways to feel what you haven't felt and to work through defenses to those feelings. But if you want to try my way, which is what I did before I learned any of that stuff, is at the end of my days of working in my clinic, when when everyone was gone, I'd close the door to my treatment room, turn off the lights, lay on my own treatment table, and I would do two things because I'd be in pain. I would close my eyes and direct my attention right at the pain. And I didn't do somatic tracking. I didn't do deep-fearing. I was like, Sarno said that there are feelings in here that we're not feeling. And I said, I want to feel them. And I'd close my eyes and I'd just stay on my low back pain and I'd have conversations with it.
Oh, I love
Say,
this
I'd say,
so much.
let me feel what you have chosen is too dangerous for us to feel. And my model in my imagination mind, because I knew I wasn't feeling much below the neck, right? Like on an emotional sense. I could feel all sorts of sensory things.
Yeah.
I knew tightness, I knew pain, I knew core engagement. But by the way, proprioceptive, proprioceptive and kind of musculoskeletal awareness is not emotional awareness. I have some of my hardest clients to work with are movements and dancers and athletes because the only thing they know how to feel is musculoskeletal and proprioceptive. And when I say feel the pain, they'll be like, it just feels tight. I'm like, no, we're turning on a new lens. You live in black and white. We need to turn the color on. There is more information than just tight. There is an emotion or three. So that's what I would do in my own practice. And I had this imagination that my body and my pain was at the bottom of a wishing well, a water well that was like 1,000 feet deep. And when I'd go, I want to feel what you think it's too dangerous for us to feel, I'd like wait because I knew the sound or the message had to travel down to the bottom of the well. And then I'd just wait and get quiet. Because if your mind's making too much noise, you won't be able to hear what comes back up. And what would come back up were these little blossoming feelings of real anger in my body. Or I'd have this like little flash, like this whiff of enormous sadness that would pass through. And my mind would be confused as hell, but I didn't care. I'm like, I don't need to know why yet. I just need to get this lawnmower started. There's something down there and I need to keep pulling on this cord because my body this lawnmower has been like in the garage. This emotional lawnmower has been in the garage with like sticky oil. No one's turned this thing on for 3 decades. And as I did that committed practice multiple times a week, unsort of filtered rage would come up. Unfiltered associations like flashbacks of my mom's death or being alone because I was a very latchkey kid, just waiting for my mom to come home and cook me meals or longing for my father. And even though I did not have a teacher or the full understanding of what I was doing, I just did it anyway. And I had this the one understanding that I knew is that my body seemed to choose, it was conditioned to fire off terrible pain instead of feel emotion. One could say the conditioned response was that if my animal or child or developmental body was feeling true emotion, my brain said, oh, when we feel rage, what we do is pain. When we smell bacon, we salivate. Just before we feel the rage or just before we feel the grief, we fire off pain and lock down this guy's low back. And so even in the midst of one, I knew I just had to start feeling again. And two, the mantra inside my mind to my body over and over again is I rather feel the agony of these emotions than the agony of my back pain over and over and over again. Along with the agony of these emotions, they really are terrible and confusing, and I don't understand them all yet, but they are not dangerous and they're part of becoming human again. So that's what I did Raylan.
And it sounds like, as with many people I've interviewed, it wasn't so much about fixing everything or changing things, that emotions just want some space to be seen and to be felt and to be let out. And I once heard, an emotion felt as an emotion changed, even just giving it that light of day. It shifts, you learn from it, it gives you some insights, and you start to feel lighter. So
Yes.
it sounds like that was very much the case for you as well.
Yeah, and actually, I'm so glad you're presencing that because this work is both diverse and complex, and it's enormously simple as well. You got to hold the truth of that paradox. And so, as we progress, I talked about how the first thing that got me better from a technical perspective was safety and undoing some conditioned response. But the next thing that quote got me better was reteaching my brain and body that emotions were safe to feel, no matter how big, no matter how intense. And then reteaching my body. Here's another thing. I want you to think about it like this, folks. Emotion has a tremendous amount of energy to it, right? So if we take rage, if we were to be like the cat, my cat, the rage gets felt and then it immediately, because it's got enormous energy to it. And let's just say both metaphysically, but also very biologically, rage wants to cause a body to then take a movement and an action and go bap, right? So just take that into consideration. Emotion, you think of it like a small piece of, like a piece of TNT. It wants to blow up, and actually, it wants to blow up. That's what it wants to do. It wants to expend its energy, and the way the energy is expressed is one through the entire body physiology feeling it, the entire body physiology feeling it, not just a piece of it. And two, to then through actual expression, whether that be physical action, whether that be sound, whether that be tears, you name it. Just consider that when a body and a brain is conditioned that its emotional experience is dangerous or unacceptable, and then it compartmentalizes a piece of TNT of energy to your sacral iliac joint area as the protective place, the amount of energy biologically being restrained to one area is enormous. So the moment, forget fixing anything, forget changing it. When you just simply allow that emotion, and this is why Howard Schubner is such a fan of EAET, emotional awareness and expression therapy. Once you allow the emotion to naturally be felt and be metabolized through the body and through action, you've just taken an insane amount of strain out of the individual area where it was cordoned off.
Yeah.
And therefore, you get often that alone. And I'd say, actually, that's my favorite tactic. If I had a go to tactic, I would go with safety, which also includes understanding and education, and feel the emotion underneath the symptom and allow your body to feel it, and you'll be fine over time. You'll also reclaim your humanity, which is nice. And you'll be able to look at your wife and love her.
That's the happy ending, the circle back we were waiting for. I love it. So I'm wondering, because I've interviewed quite a few people who have recovered, so I hear lots of different paths, a lot of similarities, more similarities than differences. But some examples we talked about, myself not understanding the science of any of it, but still recovering. And then I interviewed a woman whose 7-year-old daughter got the flu and just didn't get better. And for 2 years was in bed and couldn't go to school. A happy home, as far as we can all tell, no trauma. She did the lightning process with her mom and within weeks was better. And she's now in university. So it stuck. So no trauma work there. She didn't have to journal. She didn't have to, let her rage out. So there's just so many different examples of what this looks like for different people. And I'm wondering, how do people know? Like, in your experience, is that emotional component more often than not present? Or is there a way for people to figure out, oh, this is, like Alan Gordon talks a lot about this just being a mistake communication that's happening that you just have to rewire for safety, thinking of it more like software. So, how do people know what their
Hmm.
path is?
Totally. So, in all of these examples, I kind of alluded to this earlier, the same physics or principles are being worked with.
Mm.
Um, Safety, conditioned response, emotional awareness and expression, um, moving the brain and the cognitive system, cognition, out of one place to another place, becoming aware of and interrupting uh, nervous system patterns, retraining them. They're all happening. And then there's all these, and if you could think about there's all these different tools for engaging with those fundamental elements.
Mhm.
So if someone's a carpenter, they're using the same general tools, which are basically wood, hammers, nails, screwdrivers. But they definitely don't try to use. If they tried to use a screwdriver for a task like that required nailing, they would not do that for very long because they wouldn't make much progress, and then they would
Yeah.
rotate to another tool. They would also have a sense of the thing that they're building. They wouldn't assume that everything is a 2-bedroom house. Something might be a shed or a garage. This is a annoyingly metaphorical way of saying that we all need to start somewhere, but we
Yeah.
also all need to rotate through the elements and the interventions related to them. I believe everyone can benefit from psychoeducation and absolutely getting a new framework of understanding for the phenomenons underlying their symptoms. That's an important and miraculous thing. But you may have someone who does that, but they're still absolutely buried in doubt and fear.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the psychoeducation isn't sticking because this person's doubt and fear is so strong. Well, then it's like, okay, this is more of an emotional component. This is more of a nervous system regulation component because clearly psychoeducation and cognition alone has not helped this person vanquish this deep felt sense of fear. Okay, now we need to rotate more to this emotional integration process that we've been speaking about a lot here. What are the methods for emotional integration? They could be EAET,
Mm.
but they could also be somatic experiencing. They could be Raja Selvam's approaches to integrative somatic psychotherapy. They could be what I just explained on this podcast. And all of a sudden, as you learn to be able to handle fear in your body, then all of a sudden it's not hijacking your cognition anymore. The psychoeducation lands and you feel safe and your symptoms
Yeah.
improve. Really phenomenal. But it's like, oh my God, I've tried all that. It's still not working. Oh, well, Cindy, I think we need to learn a little bit more about your trauma and developmental history. Because where
Mm.
did the brain get its working models for fear, for survival, for protection, for what emotions are acceptable and not? It got those working models largely from development, attachment injuries, and trauma, and family history, right? Now we got to get into that. I don't suggest going all the way down the rabbit hole until we try these other often faster and easier things, including like the lightning process. The lightning process is remarkable at rewiring cognition, creating safety, very deliberately moving the body from states of fear into safety and positivity. But then sometimes, like the book cure, the lightning process starts to stall for some people, and that's where the invitation, perhaps, into the traumatic work elements of this stuff comes in.
Yeah.
So if all you've been trying to do is crush doubt, or all you've been trying to do is journal speak, or all you've been trying to do is this is an error, or all you've been trying to do is trauma work, there are huge amounts of people. I'm in a space where I'm surrounded by trauma expertise, but they know jack diddly about conditioned responses and about the actual physiology of chronic illness, and they have no idea how to treat it, although they think they do.
Yeah.
And they're wrong because they ignore cognition, they ignore psychoeducation, they ignore these more simplistic and elemental aspects. They ignore the basics of interrupting conditioned response. And so you can spend all day, all your life in trauma land and actually
Yeah.
have great emotional improvement. But since
Mhm.
you don't know about conditioned response and you don't know exactly the stimuli that are causing your brain to make a mistake, your brain's going to keep making that mistake. And therefore, the missing piece wasn't more trauma work. The missing piece was actually going back to our good old buddy at the Pain Psychology Center and be like, Your brain's making a mistake and you're fine. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad I know that. I feel better now. But none of them are antithetical to one another. None of them are
Yeah.
actually contradictory to one another. They're all
No.
just part of what I'd call the spiral staircase of getting better.
Yeah, I do know of all the ways that people go about recovery, I would say that my approach should be considered a cautionary tale. I would not recommend to anyone to not learn the science and to not
Mm.
understand what's happening in their body. I think it would have been a less stressful journey for me and probably a faster journey past the chronic symptoms had I not been fumbling my way in the dark and not having all the tools that people have now.
But I'd
So
love
I
to
just,
pop quiz you now. And I want bullet points here, Raylan.
uh-oh.
Now that you have this
Okay.
fabulous 2020 hindsight and you
Yeah.
have a pretty strong foundation in the science, if you will, how did basically the choices, the experiments, the wandering, the mindset work that you organically stumbled into and took risks on, how do they map back to what we're talking about today? How do they map back to what the ATNS knows? How do they map back? What did you do for yourself?
Oh, they map back really well in hindsight. I had no
Good.
idea at the time, but one of the things I realized just through trial and error was that there was no getting better, getting past this without occasionally feeling worse. So I realized I was going to have to do little bits of activity. Some symptoms would come up, and that was just inevitable. So I found peace with symptoms. I stopped reacting in fear and stress. And oh my goodness, I'm never going to get better. Every time symptoms came up, I'm just like, this is just what they do. It sucks, but here they are. So we know that
Mm.
how we respond to symptoms is really important. And I'd also seen over the years that when I did little bits of activity of things that I liked, I could slowly do more of it. And over time, my capacity grew. But I'd never had enough dedicated chunks of time in my life. I was on survival mode a lot of the time, just trying to pay the bills and keep my head afloat and, all the things. But I thought if I could just really create an environment where I just deliberately, slowly expanded my activity, and knew some symptoms would come on, and that's okay. And then the next week, do a little bit more. So I did this for about a year, and it just completely, after a decade living with this, transformed me. So it's like that graded exposure therapy, like phobia treatment. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I was slowly teaching my brain and my nervous system safety, that the world was safe, that I could do these things, that my body was okay. So it took me a while and I was fumbling and I did a bunch of other things that I don't think were helpful at all. But then at the time, I
Mm.
also thought might be helping. So my attention was divided. But when I look back, I see I did quite a few things that just generally helped me be a healthier person. A lot of things around, diet and, all sorts of things. And then some things that were specifically addressing the neuroplastic symptoms. And I also did
Yeah.
a lot of journaling work. And I had a feeling that there was some baggage I was carrying that I was going to need to release. So I started a shit list of sorts of things that I just knew were just in there. And slowly over the months, one by one, I journaled about them and unpacked them and let them go. So again, not understanding the role of emotions at the time, but I see now that that was one of the many things that I did that I think got me the results and got me past it.
Love
So,
it. So
yeah,
if I could like spitball it back, right? Into because
yeah.
we talked about a spiral staircase. Talk about this as like there's a rotating wheel of healing that we go through, folks. And don't hate, what is it? Uh, don't hate the game. Just embrace all of it. Like, don't get frustrated because just go to the next piece. But in this instance, first of all, just making your life healthier is a wonderful thing as long as
Mm,
we don't get orthorexic, obsessive, and vigilant about it. But when we actually make a healthier lifestyle in many ways, we are supporting the safety and function of our body. We're always going to
mm,
universally endorse that. Two, I'm going kind of from front to back here with what you said. Your journaling practice was a form of emotional awareness and expression. It
yeah.
really was flat. And I promise you that you were rewiring and remodeling your emotional system. I want to say this, guys, the emotions are the primary felt medium by which our both our all of our lived experiences come from, right? It's emotions that drive behavior. Like when we feel love or desire, we move towards the person we love and desire and we kiss them or hold them, right?
Mm.
When we feel hunger, there are people who argue that hunger is an emotion. We move towards it. So you can imagine that your robot human body, if its emotional circuits are fried or shut down, it's like it can't possibly feel safe or function properly. So you work that yourself organically. Going back to that, you came to it. Really sounds not just a disassociative, but like a grounded peace with your symptoms, an integrated peace with
Yeah.
your symptoms. And that was three things at once. One, it did provide safety
Mm.
because at least you weren't playing the game of I'm going to be afraid and hate this anymore. That's huge. You were no longer throwing gasoline on the fire. Two, it was retraining. It was an interrupt of survival response. This sucks, but I don't have to react to it like I'm dying or I'm in danger. Those are
Yeah.
two separate planets. This sucks versus what's wrong with me? I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And so you
What's wrong
really
with me? I'm never going to get better. Yeah.
right. And then
Yeah.
casting that terrible spell on yourself, right? Because language and beliefs, I call them spells. And you're either casting positive spells on yourself or you're casting hexes and curses on yourself. That matters big time. And then you also had that wonderful, this is where the intellect and the mind can be so useful. I do these things, and especially if I'm, go figure, feeling good, it's better or not as bad. Wow, that's really useful. That adds safety. That says maybe this other parts of my belief or what I've been told that I'm doomed and there's nothing I can do and it's all metabolic or whatever. That doesn't sound like it's so right. That might not be true because otherwise this wouldn't be getting better when I do it this way. You know? Um, I loved it just to mirror that. When I was in chronic pain, even before I had the answers, I'd be like, it's kind of weird that my pain, it's bad all the time. It gets really bad when I sit, but when I deadlift, it doesn't hurt more. Why does
Yeah.
deadlifting not hurt my screwed up L4 or L5 more than
Yeah.
these other things? Why can I do a clean squat and there ain't much pain there? But when I like reach for like a pencil, that hurts. Like this is all stupid. This does not make sense.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong with me, but it's not that. So
Yeah.
you got into all the principles, Raelan, all the
Yeah.
elements. You just did them organically.
Yeah. And a last one that I often forget to mention, but it's huge. And I hear it come up in so many of the interviews that I do is that at the time that I finally got past this, I had been on my own for a few years and feeling quite isolated and lonely. And I moved in with my now husband. So, and he was supportive and just safe. And he's like, you take care of yourself. Like I was very fortunate that he, paid the rent and I didn't have to worry about finances finally. And not everybody gets that. And you don't need that to recover. But I had connection. I had love in my life. I had at least one person consistently around me. And I imagine you see this as well. So many people I talk to say like, I needed to be around people. Once I started to have community, I started to feel better. And we know, I think I actually learned this at the ATNS conference, that our brain and nervous system react to isolation and rejection the same way it does to all the bear in the woods, like all the other strong, scary emotions. It's another threat. So it was something else that got put at ease once I got in that
Mm,
environment. So yeah, it was just,
mm.
yeah, a lot of great stuff.
Absolutely. And there are a few things that support a nervous system in standing down from constant survival mode than really feeling like you have someone reliable to
Yeah.
take care of you, not in like the victim sense, but in what I call either a reprieve or a convalescing sense. It's like, I just need some time to
Yeah.
heal and not have to carry all this stuff, which is different than
Yeah.
being carried. We may need to be carried for a little while in our worst moments, but I want to
Mhm.
distinguish that wonderful partnership gave you the opportunity to to a reprieve to heal, which is different than being caretaken.
Absolutely. And I very much knew that it was not his job to save me, but it gave me a space to save myself. Like, okay,
Am- Amen.
I got
A-
this. I can do this.
a- Amen. I feel you completely.
So I'd love to you've talked about so many great things and a lot of practical things for people to consider. I just love to get a glimpse because this is an excellent opportunity to get a look, inside scoop of what happens in Somia, what happens in your program. How do you walk people through this? What does this look like? I always say on any given Tuesday, like we get these grander ideas, but like, okay, I got up, I brushed my teeth. Now what? what, what should I do next? How do I take all this on?
Yeah. So we talked this whole thing about how there's like no one size fits all, but
Yeah.
you have to make a program that tries to meet the needs in some kind of structured way, as many people as for as many people as possible. And that was really at the heart of hearts when Jen and I were designing the Heal program, both to extract the elements, the islands, the wedges, the pieces of the spiral staircase that were at different points the most essential in our recoveries, which were very different. Jen was in the CFS, post viral, 40 plus symptoms, bedbound, life over category. I was more just in the excruciating chronic pain category. In retrospect, there are many other things like asthma and allergies that I've resolved as well using this work, but like very different places, male, female, very different approaches, etc. It's like when our powers combine, right? What's possible? And so the Heal program progresses in two phases. There's a level 1 and there's a level 2. And usually people need them in that order. Sometimes, believe it or not, someone needs to start in a lot of level 2 and not level 1. But we divide the process into two parts, level 1 and level 2. And level 1, we what we're doing is we're treating the fire. That's what we call it. The fire is usually the extremely strong dysregulation, survival response, fear, confusion, overwhelm, and that people are in when they have these symptoms or they've had them for a while. And so we begin our program with psychoeducation and a lot of very directed but intuitive and somatic brain retraining. It's like, we need to put out the fire. We need to support you in moving your brain from state A to state B. People a lot of times will be like, well, I feel like I'm bypassing, or I'm not taking care of my inner child, or I'm avoiding my problems. And I'll be like, we will get to your problems really soon. But when a building is on fire, you don't go, who started it or why did it start? You get the people out of the building.
That. Oh, I love that.
All right.
Nobody leave. We have to figure out who the arson is. Sit there.
Sit there and until your
Perfect
skin
analogy.
burns off. No, wrong. For most people, we need to get the fire out and get to an island of safety. And brain retraining is remarkable for that. And again, ours is intuitive, it's somatic, it's perceptual positioning. It's great.
It's perceptual positioning.
It's brain retraining that involves movement around a space.
Okay.
So, just simply, like, let's say you're in a state like fear. You could take a more DNRS approach, or you can actually do some physical actions, and you can also move away and have the perceptual, because your brain is a highly three-dimensional perceptive organ, that, oh, the dysregulated state's now over here, and I'm over here, and I feel different just because of this movement. That's an example of perceptual positioning.
Got it.
That's the beginning. We then also are very heavy into what we call NSMs, which are nervous system modifiers, which basically harness a lot of the polyvagal theory and vagus therapies to just do these nice bottom-up, deeply anatomical regulation techniques that don't require a lot of thought, that aren't brain retraining-y, right? They're just great. Now you can turn your brain off and just do this stuff, and that will be helpful when you're in a spiral or whatever. There's a couple other components of level 1, working with what we call your true self, which is the capacity of you that's untainted and can heal. It's also kind of has concepts from parts work or internal family systems, that capital S self. And there's have an investigation of beliefs. That's level 1. Level 2 is where we go deeper into the body, where we train you to expand your somatic awareness to be perceptive of a lot more than just, oh, I'm in danger mode. I need to get out of it. And it draws a lot from my training in somatic experiencing and trauma work to help people get to the embers. That's what we call them. The embers are traumas, attachment injuries, and really intense life experiences that gave birth to the perpetual anxiety as a coping pattern, that gave birth to the vigilance as a coping pattern,
Mm.
or what gave birth in the case of CFS. CFS is the nervous system largely being in the dorsal vagal state, right? It can't maintain the sympathetic defense responses. It goes into torpor, depression, energy conservation. This is what the dorsal vagus does. What were the things in the past that taught the brain that it can't and it needs to collapse? Because again, in the first part, we're just moving the brain out of collapse. That's great. But we need to work on the foundations because I don't want it to collapse again. And that's what we do in level 2. Level 2 involves somatic aspects of somatic experiencing. It involves some really beautiful and sacred. We use the word inner child work, inner child therapy, which is a way of saying we're working on developmental stuff, 0 to 7 usually. Finally is what we call through lines. This is really important. Usually a conditioned response does not exist in isolation. So if I feel, if for example, one of the things that would cause my low back pain would be the state or the feeling of overwhelm. Oh, how interesting. Okay, let me use brain retraining to move me from overwhelm to I got this or whatever. Great. Oh, it keeps coming back, and it's being less effective. Let's stay with this a little longer. When I actually allow myself to look more deeply into overwhelm, what is the experience of overwhelm? Oh, my eyes just got a little
Yeah.
watery.
Mm.
I'm afraid. I actually feel quite young. There's a deep part of me that believes I can't and I'm going to be in trouble. And my heart is like, and I can barely breathe. I feel trapped. Oh, woo-hoo. Now we've got more detail. Now we might do some emotional work around that. We might allow more of it. We might feel safe around those feelings. We might do some discharge. We might do some NSMs around it. Okay, great. But, oh, this thing keeps coming back. Okay, great. Let's get back into those feelings. Just invite yourself. What are other times in my life that I've felt this way? And then people will go, boop, bing, bang, boom. And then all of a sudden they're in 6th grade, right? Mr. Buser's teaching. And they're getting shamed in front of the whole class for not completing an assignment.
Mm.
Oh, wow. Core memory. That was extraordinarily shaming, bad, dangerous, awful. Our brain learns, unfortunately, the best when it's bathed in terror. It doesn't learn complex things, it learns survival when bathed in
Yeah.
terror,
It
right?
wires quickly.
Wires
Yeah.
quickly and very
Wow.
basically. Oh, wow. Now that we've got to a core memory construct, in level 2, we give you tools for how to do the necessary work to unwind that knot of trauma. And that's connected to the whole through line, right? And so now if you unlock the knot, if you undo the knot down here, it puts slack in the whole rest of the line, the rest of the triggers we just walked through. And eventually it just dissolves. What used to be a level 9 trigger is now, poof, it's just a puff of smoke. So that's how the HEAL program is imagined and organized to take you through that whole cycle of the through line. That is not necessary for everyone. It wasn't part of your path necessarily. And I did not need necessarily to do the trauma work that gave birth to my rage to make my symptoms go away. But I did have to do the trauma work connected to my rage to make me a more full human, to help me in my relationships and my behaviors and my leadership. It wasn't necessary for symptoms, but it was necessary for, if you will, other symptoms having to do with life. And I'll stop talking. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that was incredibly helpful. What I love about all of this is that we see a lot of what doing, the work of getting past chronic symptoms is really just what is doing the work on yourself and just becoming, the best possible you. Because I'm listening to you speak and I'm thinking, should I sign up? This sounds amazing. These are just great things to go through for the people who need it. So excellent. Your book, The Secret Language of the Body, also excellent. I was looking at the reviews this morning. Well done. This has been really well received, just really landing for a lot of people and lots of people finding it very helpful. So, of course, as always, everything is linked in the video description to check out Karden's book, their Heal program, and any and all other resources that you have available. I'm also going to link the interview that I did with your co-founder of Heal, Jennifer Mann, because that was an excellent interview as well. She is just an amazing human being. So that's another great one
Mm.
to check out if people want to learn a little bit more about the people who run this program and about what that looks like. But yeah, massive thanks for being here, Carden. This was incredible. So
This was
great
a
having you.
ton of fun, and
Uh,
massive thanks to you too, because I know that you are
mm,
the genesis of thousands, if not tens of thousands, of recoveries because
yeah.
you give people the belief and the path, and n- never take that for granted, Raelan. It's a remarkable service.
I appreciate you saying that. And it is one of the magical parts of my life that I get to do this. And thank you to everyone who's watching and listening. I appreciate you being here. And if you want to check out this interview with Jen Mann, I will be there with her waiting to greet you as soon as you click play.
Thank you.
All
Beautiful.
right.